Hi, I'm Joe Pena, and this is Enlighten Me. Discussions with people on a mission, perhaps like you, who have a commitment to your purpose and the courage to see it through. Today I'm talking with Jen McCarty. Jen is a spiritual teacher, speaker, musician, and singer. In helping others awaken and grow spiritually, she explains this using an analogy of a candle. When a candle is lit, it is very easy to light other candles. She has quite a successful following in the Facebook group called The Event is Happening. Jen is also an inspiration to a group of people who feel a pull to the subject of twin flames. We're going to have a discussion for people who aren't yet familiar with your work, or you for that matter, Jen. But for now, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. It is absolutely amazing to be here.
For anybody who hasn't witnessed it, you are described as a musician and a singer. So I'd like for you to maybe help me out understand how that comes into play with what you do.
Well, it's just a natural gift that I've always had. I come from a very musical family, and my grandfather, he learned how to play the piano just by he could hear a song and he could just play it. To be honest, my family is very, very gifted creatively, and I just think it's like it was innate. I mean, I could sing with perfect pitch when I was very, very young. And but then as I deepened on my spiritual path, and I had my spiritual awakening when I was age 21 on top of a Himalayan mountain, the first message that I received from God, well, because I basically met God, and God told me that I would share my message of this experience of meeting God mainly through music, and I would transmit the most kind of like divine and sacred codes that are connected to my mission through music. So even though it was a natural gift, I think my spirituality has very, very much deepened that gift, and I always sing music that is prayerful or meditative, or music that invokes those spiritual frequencies within us. So I do a lot of mantra, a lot of prayer, a lot of rainbow songs, a lot of medicine songs. So yeah. So
Jen, you mentioned the Himalayas when you were 21.
Yeah.
How long were you on that path in particular that led you to the point of even getting there to begin with?
Well, when I was about 15, I became very, very interested in astrology, and I found that I had a kind of like an aptitude for astrology, like an understanding of it that I'd only just learned about it, but I just had an instinctive understanding about astrology, and then that got me on a path to learning about crystals, I Ching, meditation, like all these different aspects of spirituality. But it was just like I was kind of like window shopping, going, oh, there's I Ching, there's numerology, oh, there's astrology. And then when I was 18, I met this woman who grew up in Hawaii, and her name was Andromeda, and she was a bit older than me, and she was on a spiritual path, and that was connected to her auntie in Hawaii. And so she had the books from Shakti Gawain, and I think it was Louise Hay that I found out through Andromeda. And so I read the book Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain, and in that book she introduces you to your higher self in the form of a masculine and feminine guardian angel. So I read this book when I was 18, and I met my guardian angels, and she guides you just to ask them what their names are. And I just innocently asked them what their names are, and I heard clearer than a bell ringing. I heard the masculine angel said his name was Christopher, and the feminine angel told me that her name was Elijah. So I was like, oh, well, my guardian angels are Christopher and Elijah, and I started having like a relationship with them. And then I got to India a couple of years later when I was 21. And as soon as I got to India, I started having these visions that I was going to be meeting a physical embodiment of Christopher in the form of a soulmate. So every time I meditated, I could see this outline of this man. And my spirit guides told me that this was Christopher. And so I ended up going on this long journey up into the Himalayas, and I met this wonderful man. I was traveling with a group of us, and the first thing he said to me was that his spiritual name is Christopher. And then he then guided us up on this very, very long trek up the Himalayan mountains, and basically, I'm really sorry. Can we just cut for 1 minute? Is my dog barking going to be a problem? Because I might have to go and sort him out. Okay, so back to my story. Mm-hmm. So we travelled up this very, very, very long, treacherous mountain in the Himalayas, and basically I got to the top of the mountain, and I had a strong urge, like a strong intuitive urge, that I was to be on my own. And so I just walked away from the group, and I basically went to the edge of the cliff, and I looked up at the sky, and I was, I forgot to tell you, just before we went on the on this trek up the Himalayas, I met this woman, and she said to me, "You must chant the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. Please chant the mantra Om Namah Shivaya." So the whole time up the mountain, I chanted the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. And in that moment, when it was time for me to be on my own, I basically walked to the edge of the cliff, and I was chanting the mantra Om Namah Shivaya, and I looked up at the sky, and I suddenly saw this flash of light. And in that moment, I realized that I was in the presence of God, but God wasn't this scary old man that my Catholic religion had told me about, this man with a long grey beard judging everyone like in the sky. I realized that God is the vibration of love, which is the energy of creation. And in that moment, it was like literally my third eye blasted open, and I just went into full and complete God consciousness. And I realized that every single blade of grass and every single grain of sand is intricately woven into the perfection of creation, and that there is not one aspect of creation that doesn't have a guardian angel. Every single aspect of creation is guarded over by angelic beings. So I was shown implicitly about oneness, that all is one, everything is one, I am one, all is one, all that exists is oneness. And if it's not, if your consciousness is not aligned to the truth of oneness, then you are in an illusion. That's what I was shown. And this light, it entered into through my crown, and basically as it got down to my belly, that was where I stored all the fear, because I was a very deep soul with a lot of Scorpio in my chart, and I'd carried a lot of fear in my belly, because I believed I was separate. I believed my egoic narrative that, you know, that had convinced me that, you know, there was no God, I'd been abandoned, it was just a complete survival experience. And like my ego was invested in that belief of separation. And so I often explain to people that my experience was like, prior to that experience, I perceived myself as an individualized drop of water, like a singular drop of water. And in that moment, that singular drop of water returned home to the ocean. And it was like, once that singular drop of water returned home to the ocean, I remembered that I am the whole entire ocean. And I realized that we all are that we are all intricately connected to this web of perfection of creation. And that's the greatest way that I can describe what happened to me. It was like the singular drop of water returning back to the ocean. That was basically what happened. And so I had this experience, and it lasted for about 10 minutes. And then I was told a lot of things about what about my destiny. I think that was the next day, actually. So after that experience happened, I was guided to go and tell my friend Dean, who was Christopher. His spiritual name was Christopher, and the same thing had happened to him when he was 21. He ended up having a really, really full-on spiritual awakening. And then the next day I woke up and I just started getting loads and loads of downloads about the nature of reality. And it was like my heart became the sacred scriptures. And I started having this direct experience of my heart literally being the sacred scriptures. And and it was like I was just getting like download after download about, because prior to that experience, I didn't know what love is. Love was a two-dimensional word. I mean, I loved my mum, but I didn't know about divine love. I didn't know what eternity was. That was a two-dimensional word. I had no understanding of that word. I didn't know what infinity is. I didn't know what timelessness is. And so the day after that experience, I was getting like educated and taught by my higher self about what these words truly mean. And it was like I penetrated the deepest depths of gnosis around eternity, of timelessness, of infinity, of love, of God consciousness. And so that basically activated a very, very powerful Kundalini awakening. And so I started experiencing a lot of bliss in from my base, and it was just like getting loads and loads of rushes of bliss. And then the next day I looked at my soul brother Dean, and I looked in his eyes, and clearer than the blue sky above me, I saw the Christ self in him. And I'd never seen it in anyone else, not even a child, but I saw it clearer than day. I saw the Christ being in him. And then it's because I could see it so distinctly and so clearly and so obviously, I realized that it was in me as well, that I wouldn't be able to see it in him if it wasn't in me. And then in that moment, I realized that every single one of us is the Christ. Every single one of us, no matter where you are on your spiritual evolutionary path, you hold the seed of the Christ self within you. Whether that becomes the fruit of your true awakening, that's another story. But every single one of God's creations holds the truth of those Christ codes within them. So that was a bit of a revelation for me. I was like, oh my God, they don't tell you that in school, do they? That every single one of your brothers and sisters that is incarnated alive is the holiest of the holiest of the holiest. And so it was all just a big, massive revelation for me. And then I realized, I was like, holy macaroni, that no one's awake. There's literally no one. And that's what I realized. It was kind of like a very, very rare sort of plateau that I arrived at. And it was in 1995. I was very young, and it was a lonely path. I mean, obviously I was very, very much, at one with God, and I was in a state of ecstatic bliss. But in terms of having other humans who understood, that just wasn't a reality. But what I realized when I had that experience was that I had that experience in order to give it away to all my brothers and sisters. Like, that was the first thing I realized. As soon as my third eye blasted open, I realized that this was for all my brothers and sisters. I was having the experience in order for it to be given away. And so that was what I, and that's what I've devoted my whole entire life to, is sharing that experience of being blasted with God. And, now the way I look at it, it's like most people, if you're lucky, will sign up for a spoonful of God consciousness. Some people that are like teachers and whatever, that they might get a cup of God consciousness. But I actually signed up for the whole entire bottle, and I basically had an overdose of God. But it was a necessary overdose, because it had to spill out, just had to be spilled out, so that all of my brothers and sisters could also be, have the gift of that experience of what I experienced. So yeah, there's a lot to share, and I'm speaking a lot about this in my book.
Okay, we're going to get to your book in just a bit.
Yeah,
we're definitely going to have that discussion. I really just want to cover something that I was wondering about, and it was specifically about the downloads. See, you talked about being in the Himalayas, in India, and receiving downloads. What was that experience of receiving the downloads? Was it like a mind's eye, seeing and feeling and hearing? What was that like?
It was, the closest thing that I can compare it to is ecstasy. And it was like different areas of my body. So I was getting angelic whispers, like it was almost like the angels were whispering continuously messages about God and about the true nature of reality. And then as these messages would come, it was almost like my higher self was like pouring down these messages that would then somehow connect with my Kundalini energy, and then it would cause a rush of my Kundalini energy. So it was a very, very deeply ecstatic somatic experience. Like it was unlike anything I've ever known before, but it was like it was a bit like being on very hardcore drugs in a way, but without being on drugs at all. But that's my only kind of reference that I can compare it to. Do you know what I mean?
I happen to, yes, know what you mean.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to say that, so what you were in a state of ecstasy, and these downloads occurred for you. And then at some point it eased off and eased away and probably filtered in a very slow kind of, didn't even realize, and you were going from that state of utter bliss and ecstasy into a state of almost normalcy. But at the same time, when you did come out of that ecstasy into this place of normalcy, if you will, what was that feeling like? Did you feel like the Jen that you were before? Or were you still in some sort of residual experience of what that was like for you?
So basically, I was in the middle of my second year of my degree, and when I had my spiritual awakening, I wrote to my university and said, I'm not coming back, I'm staying in India. And so I stayed in that extremely ecstatic, blissful state for that whole time in India, which was a 6-month experience. So then as soon as I got back to the UK, I felt myself, it was like I was flying. Basically, my whole experience in India, even though I'm a very, very grounded person, I've got loads of Capricorn in my chart, I was having the experience where my soul consciousness was flying. And so when I got back to the UK, it was just this really, really super, super gliding, gentle landing. That's just what happened. I just kind of landed, and I landed. And so the experience of landing was that I stopped getting all the rushes so intensely. I mean, but it altered me completely, because the experience that I had, it basically kind of like took away the egoic programming, really. And all that was left was my true self, my divine, childlike, innocent self. And so I became more myself than I'd ever been. that was my direct experience. And so I think about that experience probably about 50 times a day, and it is a part of the core of who I am. There is not a second really that goes by when it's not who I am. So I never ever experienced a separation or detachment from that experience. It was always like a really full-on umbilical cord that was always connecting me to that vibration of that experience. And so I came back to the UK, and I just came back with so much wisdom and so much love and so much compassion and such a desire to serve. Like I just wanted to serve like 24/7. I just wanted to look after my brothers and sisters. I wanted to look after my family. I wanted to let everyone know that it's all going to be all right, that God is real. And I'm really, really sorry that this is such a shit show, pardon my language, but you know, that this illusion is so heavy duty. But I just wanted everyone to know that it's all amazing. Like God is real, and it is our duty and responsibility to attune to that remembrance of God consciousness. So it never ever left me, and it is who I am. And I feel like it's given me a huge kind of like oomph or boost in terms of how I show up in the world.
I think that's pretty evident, at least to me it is, and I'm sure to many other people who come to know you through your work. Jen, when you mentioned that you could tap into that about 50 times a day, after having had that experience, and I imagine it just imprinted itself within your being.
Yeah. Yes.
While you may not always be in an ecstatic state like you had been, you can easily and readily tap into it. Would that be accurate?
I can easily I can't tap into that kind of like ecstatic rush experience, but I can tap into that ocean of wellness and that ocean of remembrance that comes when you know that you know God is your best friend and all the ascended beings are your best friends, and you've made it. Like I when I had that experience on top of the mountain, I implicitly understood that every single soul that returns back to the earthly plane on their reincarnation cycles comes in order to experience what I experienced. Like that is the final culmination of the human experience, where you remember your oneness with God, like deeply, absolutely, and implicitly. And so I realized that I reached a plateau which every soul is seeking, whether it's in this lifetime, whether it's in 1,000 lifetimes. Everyone is on this trajectory to come home to full remembrance.
All right, let's fast forward then. We were left you in the Himalayas. You came back to the UK. Yeah. And you mentioned that you glided in. Yeah. At some point, I imagine you ran headlong into 3D.
No. I mean, obviously, like I had to interface with 3D reality all the time, but I never, ever. Well, saying that, what happened was, it's a bit of a complicated story, but I ended up moving to Glastonbury. I stayed in a very, very, very high aligned and ecstatic state for maybe a good 12 years after my experience. But what happened was I ended up hanging out with a group of people who had spent a lot of time in India. They all dressed in white. They all had dreadlocks. They looked the part. They looked like they had done the work to become like spiritual masters. But what happened was that this group of people were actually hedonists, and they had no interest at all in the right path. They were actually on the left path, which is all about kind of like making choices that like devilish choices that kind of like make you out of alignment with God. And so, but because of I went into angelic consciousness, I would just meet everyone and I would just put that assumption on them. You're an angelic consciousness, especially if you look like me, especially if you've had a similar life to me, i.e. spending a lot of time in India and all that, and rainbow gatherings and what have you. And so what happened was I ended up getting involved with a group of people that had not escaped the matrix. And so their programming started to infiltrate, and I didn't even realize that was going on. And then it was in 2012 so this was only going on for a couple of years, but my spirit team flagged it up and they said, we need to cut you from that group. And that they were my friends for 15 years. And so a situation was orchestrated for me to split from that group. And then the moment I split from that group, I realized that they were all caterpillars. They were all 3D caterpillars. They had not ascended into 5D butterfly consciousness. And I was 5D butterfly, but I'd been hanging out with caterpillars. And so I noticed that there was a little bit of infiltration programming that had somehow slipped in from that group. But the moment I left that group, I was like, boom. I was like, I basically I went on to have another Kundalini awakening in 2013, which was connected to leaving that group of people. So does that answer your question?
As a matter of fact, it addresses it really well, actually, in a way that I didn't anticipate, because I was envisioning you making your way through the world and interacting with 3D and perhaps having challenges with just normal everyday life. But what you had was a unique experience in that you aligned yourself with people who looked and felt very similar. And by virtue of that, you came to learn a very valuable lesson in that things are not always what they appear. Yes. And that while you may hold other people in the highest light, and they do hold that light, absolutely. Yeah. They may just not be connected to it. And that's all that is to it. Because you spoke earlier about seeing the Christ and knowing the Christ in everyone. So by virtue of that, how could this particular group not have it within them as well, right?
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yet they weren't expressing it. How interesting that it took whatever period of time, in whatever ways, but somehow, somewhere within you, you felt that it was affecting you. And it was that which that called up into you. And all I'm really emphasizing here, Jen, is the thing that we all have within us, and that's the ability to call up this recognition. You see, the point that I was making was that you tapped into something within yourself that many people do, whether they've had a spiritual awakening or not. But in your case, it was something that you might not expect to happen in terms of falling into ways of being once you've had an awakening, recognizing that there was something within you that wasn't in alignment with how you wanted to express yourself in this world, and to course correct and do so in a way that was loving mostly to yourself, and also recognizing the divinity within all these other people without the judgment that might have come along with it. Yes?
Yeah, definitely. That is what happened. And, but it was a big lesson for me to, because of having that experience so young, you just think everyone remembers their divinity and everyone remembers that they're an angel on earth, and that was a bit of a pitfall for me. They are that, but they don't remember that. And they're making choices that are, these people that I'm speaking about, these are originally part of the 144,000, but they are high-level souls that have come back and have chosen the path of escapism, drug addiction, and hedonism. Mm-hmm. And so these people, like I know them from past lives. I know them even from Israel 2,000 years ago and things like that. And so it was very, very convincing that they are on this team. They are on this Ascension team, but it was very, very obvious that they weren't on the Ascension team. In fact, this group of people that I'm talking about are on the dissension path. And so they are making choices that can only be described as devilish. And they are the choices that they are making. And I don't think they're making God happy at all. And I'm getting like full on goosebumps because God doesn't want to see her children just self-destruct, hit the self-destruct button. And that's what they're doing. That's what all this whole group is doing. None of them have chosen the Ascension path, really. They've all gone 100% 3D. It's really sad.
Would you say
service to self? Yes. They're all about drugs. They're all about partying, going out, getting high. I just want to feel that. It's like, no, that's not why you're here. You're here to make this world beautiful for all your brothers and sisters, not to be sitting there in a self-induced, whatever, bubble of whatever. But anyway, that's another story. That it's a big part of my life, that was leaving that group of people.
Yeah, I imagine it was disappointing too for you, for that matter.
It was, because it was a clan. I was part of this clan, and we all had our kids together, and then it was like I was a lone wolf, and that's hard for the soul to have to move on its solo path. But I had to stay on my solo path for a really, really long time, and then eventually I sort of like went public with my gifts and my teachings, but it took me till 2015 was when I wrote my first energy report. So that was like 20 years after my spiritual awakening experience. And I always resisted the going public. It wasn't something that I ever wanted, because I always felt that it would create a separation between me and my brothers and sisters, and that I would get projected on as being special, and I never ever wanted that. I wanted us all to just be in a circle and realize that we're all one, and so that is what kind of like blocked me from stepping forward. But then I connected with the higher self of my divine counterpart, who is a public figure. And his higher self said to me that we will never, ever come into union unless you like step out into the public eye. And so I kind of feel like, I had him basically kicking me up the bum. And I don't think I would have done it. I definitely wouldn't have done it. I would have just been quietly doing my little thing and doing my great work, but not with a platform or not with a, I would have just probably been anonymous. I quite like the idea of being anonymous. But anyway, it's fine. I chose that path, and I'm happy with it now.
There's safety in anonymity. And evidently you got to a point where you chose between safety and doing the work in the world that you're here to do. Yes? Yeah,
definitely.
You mentioned being a lone wolf for all those years. That was a courageous thing to do, because whether you knew what lied ahead of you or not, that period of being the lone wolf, I am sure, resulted in even further growth and maturity on your part.
Extraordinary level of growth.
What we've done is known that you've gone and been in India for 6 months. That's a long time from my perspective to be immersed in that kind of environment. Because that immersion there is one thing, but to step away from it and to go into, say, a 3D setting like you did when you returned. Not to return to old ways, or even for that matter, find a way to make your way into the world, like so many people are having a challenge doing. These are things that I think are quite common to many. However, the thing that I feel is very uncommon is that they manage to spend a whole 6-month period, or maybe even longer, immersed in that space, immersed in that way of being, that way of living, the way of experiencing our lives. So, I attribute a very significant amount of credence to the time that you spent in that, coming back and keeping and maintaining your ability to walk that path, if you will. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you could have done the same by having just come back maybe the next week?
No, I had to have that 6 months in India in order to completely free myself of the third dimensional matrix program. And I think for myself, I'm a soul reader, and I've read my own soul, and I would say that I've had 90% of my lifetimes as an Indian Baba. And so when my soul returned home to the Himalayas, there was like layers upon layers upon layers of energy, of the frequency of home for my soul to. It was like a puzzle, and India was like the placeholder for the puzzle of myself to fit back into. And then as I fitted back into the matrix of India, I basically dismantled from the third dimensional matrix of the West, and the 6-month period enabled me to fully clear all of that programming, or like 98.9% at least. So yeah, and when I got back, it was just, I wasn't so ecstatically high, but I was still completely aligned and completely connected and illuminated. And, you know, all of my friends, everyone got on a spiritual path all around me. Even my friends were quite sort of middle class, well off, kind of posh people really, that weren't into spirituality, and they all just suddenly started like meditating and like reading spiritual books and going to workshops. So I could see it was having a massive effect on everyone around me. Not so much my family, but my family could see that I had become my true self, and that was obviously an amazing gift for them. And yeah.
Okay, well, all that said, because I put the emphasis on immersing yourself in that space for so long, there's the practical matter of people in today's world, especially in today's world, where the connecting we do with others, for example, is electronically, like the two of us are doing right now. And how beautiful that there are places like Facebook, which happens to have maybe positive and not so positive aspects to it. But the one positive thing is that there are groups on Facebook of people who align together and join together and basically come into a space where they can be in that way that I feel that you might have been when you were in the Himalayas. And you have a group on Facebook. This group is rather large, as I understand it. What is the energy like in that space?
Well, I mean, when I created the group, that's a whole nother subject matter, my group, because it's called The Event Is Happening, and it's connected to the Solar Flash event that I received a message from my spirit team in 2017 that there was going to be a Solar Flash event, and I was shown a timeline whereby all of this magenta light comes into the earth, and it isn't light, it's actually like basically tangible God presence, really. That's what it is. It's like, so literally everyone is going to get hit by this force of remembrance of the divinity of nature. And my guide said to me, this is really, really happening, and it's all to do with the collective consciousness. Basically, like, I was shown without words that in order to attract the event, humanity's consciousness has to reach a critical mass of awakened beings, and I think it's around the 51% mark. But as soon as that occurs, then our collective timeline will shift, and then we will come into alignment with the timeline of the Solar Flash event. So my team like showed me this whole kind of like, you know, play out of what was going to happen, and they said to me, like, this event really, really is about to happen, and you know, you need to let people know about that. So I accepted it. I was like, okay, wow, that's absolutely amazing. And I kind of put it on the back burner. And then 2 months later, a friend of mine wrote on Facebook, has anyone heard of the event? And I was like, oh, I've heard of the event. And she was the only person I'd ever heard speak about the event. And then she sent me these videos from this woman whose son had passed over. And then he was bringing through information about the Solar Flash event. And it was completely in alignment with the message that I had received. And then I was brought to Alison Coe's work, who's a QHHT practitioner. And
yeah, I like her work.
Yeah, and all of her clients that she was regressing were coming out with the same information, that there's going to be a Solar Flash event.
Right.
So lo and behold, I found myself down this rabbit hole of like loads and loads of people that were talking about the event. And so then I just realized that I was being guided to create some sort of forum for people to come together to prepare for the event and to talk about and discuss the event. And so one day I was just casually sitting at my computer, and I just decided to create a group called The Event Is Happening. And I'd already been doing twin flame transmissions for about 2 or 3 years. So I had a core of about 300 to 500 women that were completely committed to this work in the transmissions. So the day I created the group, I added all those women. And so that was like a really powerful spiritual core was created on day one of the group. And then within, it was utterly ridiculous. It's something like I'm going to say it was something like 11,000 people joined us in the first week. It just was a zeitgeist movement. It was like suddenly everyone was just hearing about the event. Like a lot of people were having dreams about the event. It was in March 2018. And so we had loads of people join the group because they had an intuitive hit about the event. And then they put into Facebook the event, and then our group would come up. So it was incredible to witness that sort of like coming together of all of these star seeds. And I decided very, very quickly that I was going to run a very, very tight ship in my group. And I immediately attracted loads and loads of moderators that wanted to help me. I've got about 30 moderators on the group. But I basically made sure that we were all singing from the same hymn sheet. And that is that we do not tolerate any rudeness, any abuse, any trolling behavior. If you come with a negative energy, you will be basically booted out of the group. That is just the way it is. That was my my guidance was, this isn't only a loving space. This is a space where we're kind to each other. This is a space where we are co-creating the frequencies of the new earth, where we're supporting each other to grow and expand and fanning the flames of each other's spiritual gifts. So if you're not working in resonance with that vibration, it's just not going to work for you. You have to go and find another group. So because of that, everyone felt this incredible safety. And also because I've got a very strong mother energy, I work a lot with the Mary energy. And so people felt like my higher self was like a mama bear, you know, like guarding over the space. And We had like 22,000 people join by the second month, and each month it was just rolling by. It was exponentially just expanding. But then after the first year, we got shadow banned by Facebook, and we stopped coming up in all of the news feeds. Like basically, because previously to that, we would come up in the news feed, but our group would come up. It just stopped coming up, and then all of the places where our group was publicized, it would flash up a little group, like it all went. And so, but we managed to maintain a very, very, very high level of engagement, even though we were getting shadow banned. But then eventually I lost my Facebook platform a few weeks ago. And so the group, I'm not an admin in the group at the moment, and I don't know if I ever will be again. So, but that's another story. Okay.
So you did create this space.
Yeah.
It was a safe space.
It still is.
Beautiful. I'm glad to hear that. Is your group of moderators, the ones that you had selected, are they the ones still running it?
Yeah, 100%.
Are they still running from the same hymn sheet?
Absolutely. They all love me so much. Beautiful. I am such a loved person. And I don't know. They just, it's weird.
I would like to say that the ground rules that you laid, some would call it intolerant, because you wouldn't tolerate rude behavior, etc.
Yeah.
I refer to it as just maintaining good boundaries that enabled you to create this safety for people to come in and be however they were. And isn't that the same kind of safety that you embroiled yourself in when you were in the Himalayas?
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
How unsurprising it is that you created this space virtually here for people.
Yeah, I think that just about sums up my whole entire life. My whole life is a constant desire to bring that energy into the present moment, no matter who I'm with, whether I'm like going to the supermarket. I see it as an opportunity to connect with that beautiful sister that is serving me. Like, I just want to be present with her. I want to connect with her. I see every single moment as an opportunity to create heaven on earth. And we are angels in human form. And that is our job, to create heaven on earth. And I'm 100% committed to it. And I don't have any days off. I don't have any hours off. I'm just on it.
As well you should be. By virtue of what you have that you can offer and bring to the world.
Thank you.
Now, what I'd like to do is cover two last topics together, intertwined, because I'm sure they are. And those topics are A, twin flames, and B, the book that you're writing. Okay. So do me a favor and start, for anybody who's not familiar with the concept of twin flames, help us understand that, and then dive right into whatever aspects of that and the book that you'd like to cover.
Okay. So what I've been shown is that everything I share is nothing is read, nothing is regurgitated. I don't know if anyone's ever said this. This is what I've been shown by my spirit team. And what I've been shown is that at the beginning of creation, all that existed was a white ovoid light. And it existed as that for bazillions and bazillions of eons of time. And at some point within that existence of this white ovoid sphere, it was decreed amongst itself, a council was called, and it was decreed amongst itself that a split would be allowed to take place in order for that light to look upon itself and see itself and know itself and recognize itself, in order to have the experience of being separate, so that one could come back together in sacred union. And so in that original split, I was shown that as the souls split forth from the great ovoid white light, they split forth as a unit of masculine and feminine energy, because the masculine and feminine energy is like two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one side of a coin. If you create a coin, there's always two sides. And it's the same with the masculine and feminine energy. Mother, Father, God doesn't sit there and create a masculine. It's like Mother, Father, God co-creates a masculine and feminine unit of creation. And so that is what existed for trillions of years. We existed as separate from source energy, but in our androgynous soul pods, containing the perfect vibratory signature. So each masculine and feminine contains the identical vibratory signature as each other, or one could also say the identical macabric patterning. because we're all fractals from the mother Merkaba, and we're all fractals of that mother Merkaba. And so as twins split from the mother Merkaba, we hold identical patternings as the masculine and feminine. And so I was shown that these androgynous pods stay together for eons of time, and again a great council was called, and it was decreed that which had been separated forever, i.e. these masculine and feminine units, would be allowed to separate in order to have that experience of being polarized, in order to have that experience of being able to go out as individualized aspects of consciousness in our polarized forms, in order to gather information and gather experiences which ultimately can be brought back to the Godhead in order to create an expansion within the Godhead. And so I was shown that this split occurred whereby the androgynous pods split into the masculine and feminine energies, and then we went off on our individual incarnations. Now, I was shown that prior to the fall of Atlantis, the twin flames, even though we had split into our polarized forms, we still were contracted to always come into physical union wherever we incarnated, whether that's the Pleiades, whether that's Lemuria, whether that's Lyra. It was just a part of our soul contract that we would always incarnate at the same time, i.e. never experience separation from each other, even though we're in our polarized forms. But I was shown that at the time of Atlantis, when this experiment was allowed to take place with humanity's DNA, whereby it was scrambled from its 12-strand diamond formation, and it was scrambled and it became 2-strand with a 10-strand so-called junk DNA, offline DNA. And so this is all connected to, basically our DNA is the roadmap back to our divinity. And so it was scrambled with, at the time of Atlantis, to cause confusion in Mother, Father, God's children, so that roadmap back to the remembrance of our divinity was tampered with. And this massively affected the memories of the twin flames. And so I was shown that at the time of Atlantis, this was when the twins actually experienced their core primary split from each other. And in all of the work that I do, most of the trauma that twins are dealing with are from that split in Atlantis. I've just facilitated a big, massive global ceremony about recorrecting that timeline. So a twin flame is the one that is literally is a twin. It's a bit like a conjoined twin. Like we all have this, like an element of ourself that is a conjoined aspect, but we not everyone awakens to that. That's the thing. I've just wrote a chapter of that in my book. You know, people ask me all the time, does everyone have a twin flame? And my answer is yes, everyone has a twin flame, but not everyone is soul contracted to unite with their twin flame in this lifetime. Not everyone is contracted to remember the fact that they are a twin flame, but it doesn't mean that we don't all have twin flames, because the masculine and feminine energy cannot be created independently from each other. So basically, a twin flame is your identical vibrational counterpart. And I mean, I go into huge depth about this in my book, and it's all related to the 144 monadic soul structure, which is 72 masculine and 72 feminine. And we all stand in a circle of the outer ring being the masculine polarity, 72 masculine polarity within the 144 soul group, and then the inner circle is the 72 feminine polarities, and we're all standing opposite our vibrational counterpart within that great circle of our particular monadic soul group. And so the one that you stand opposite with, that is your tonal match. That is your identical tonal partner.
You have a group of people that you're walking through this twin flame experience, are you not?
Well, I have a massive online community. I wouldn't necessarily say I have a few people. I think, I think many people.
Okay. You say your online community, and where is that community located?
Well, I've still got my group, still got 100,000 people in the group. Mm-hmm. I've still got my Facebook. I've still got my YouTube. I've got other social media platforms. I've got my subscription. I've got my blog,
Okay. Now, we talked about your book. What is the title of your book?
The title of my book is Twin Flames and the Event, a message for the 144,000 starseeds.
And if someone were interested in purchasing your book, where would they go and do that?
Well, I'm going to be creating a pre-order section on Amazon, hopefully within the next week. I've just completed the first draft of the book. I've just got to do a couple more bonus chapters, but I've pretty much done the first draft of the book, which means now I can focus on actually uploading the book, and so it's going to be available for pre-order. But also I'm going to be doing a limited edition version because I channel light codes, Pleiadian light codes. So I'm going to be having a hardback version. And there's going to be dotted in, there's going to be Pleiadian light codes, and there's going to be a few special editions of that. So that will also be, you'll be able to pre-order that as well.
Now, Jen, you are planning on having a webinar to promote the launch of the book.
Yes.
Tell me about both the webinar and about the launch and the launch date.
So the launch date is the 14th of February, and I'm really open to doing any interviews or podcasts or radio interviews or magazine spreads to let people know about my book. And the webinar is just, I think what we're going to be focusing on is clearing any blocks that are preventing you from coming together with your twin. And we're going to be working with very, very powerful magical codes that will assist you to attract your twin flame. So it's going to be around that particular area, but also I'll be sharing a lot about what you need to do, because it's not a soulmate relationship. With a soulmate relationship, you don't really have to do the spiritual work. You can get by with just being 3D, and you can meet a decent soulmate, have a decent job, have a nice house. Like, you can just get on with it and not really awaken. But that's not the twin flame path. The twin flame path is that you have to realize that it is your duty and responsibility to awaken and become a spiritual master, and to have some sort of like understanding that your egoic narrative is not who you truly are. And so we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be sharing spiritual practices with people that will help them align with their true mastery codes. And that's the whole point of the twin flame path, is that we are leaders, we are masters, we are teachers, we are way showers. And so we have to just keep stepping up to the plate and keep adjusting our vibration so that we become one with our higher self. And then when you become one with your higher self, you have this experience of the circle is complete. And then once within your own being, you know that the circle is complete, there's no more lack. There's no more lack programming. There's just a case of wanting to be in service. And so when you're in that place where there's no more lack, that is when you become truly magnetic to your twin. And it is all about divine timing. Like, for myself, I've reached that place, and I really, really am not fussed. Even when I come into physical union, I feel it's going to be happening very, very, very fast, but it's not. There's no lack programming in me. There's just this amazing feeling of excitement, of joy, of knowing that it cannot not come, because there's no resistance in me that's pushing it away. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I sure do know what you mean. And I definitely feel what you mean, Jen.
Thank you.
So this must be very empowering to the people who come to these events that you have. They are events that you have that are twin flame specific, are they not?
Yes, on every numerological portal date, such as the 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, etc., I host global meditations, and they are very, very much connected to basically your ascension and assisting you to transform from caterpillar consciousness to butterfly consciousness, assisting you to go from that 2-strand scrambled DNA formation to that 12-strand perfected diamond formation. That is a lot of what my work involves, and it's kind of like working on really, really polishing up your own vibration so that you can become completely magnetic to your divine counterpart. That's what it's all about.
So there's work involved.
Yeah, loads.
Yeah. Well, I think for anybody who resonates with that, the work isn't something that would sway them from wanting to pursue it.
No,
because clearly, if they've had a desire for something like that, for a connection like that, and have not received it to date, clearly something is missing. and perhaps they can
there's
find
work
that.
to do. There's unless you're at a place where you're totally at peace and it's just not an issue, then there's still a bit of work to do, I'd say. And it's great. We're all on this wonderful journey together. And but I do loads of things. I have loads and loads of offerings, and people can go to my website, which is jenmccarty.co.uk, and check out all my offerings. I've got amazing courses, and I share with you all about my transmissions, and got loads of MP3s, really powerful MP3s, and
Is there anything that you're doing with regard to winter solstice?
Yes, thank you so much for asking, Joe. I'm going to be hosting a large global meditation on the 21st of December, and we're going to be working with the Aboriginal elders who are the guardians of Uluru, and they have been told that it's time for the black box in Uluru to be opened, and all of the elders have asked for people to come together in their soul groups, ascension groups, to all meditate and send really, really good energy to the opening of this black box. I've received a lot of direct intel about the black box and about what is actually contained within it, and it is connected to the star system of the Pleiades, and it's also connected to the elemental realms. So I will be sharing with everyone all of the intel that I've received about the black box, and we will be assisting with all of the elders in this great grand event, which is going to be taking place on the Grand Conjunction. And also I will be hosting a one-day spiritual rejuvenation retreat, and I have special guests Magenta Pixie, Laura Eisenhower and Charlie Freak, who will be joining me, and we will be going very, very deep into, back to my spiritual roots of working with mantra and prayer. We'll be doing a lot of sacred music, and we'll also be doing a lot of work with activating the age regeneration codons within our DNA. We have to do a bit of a cleanup of our DNA because this age degeneration codon needs to be removed, because that wasn't the original plan of the blueprint of our creation. We were created to coexist in these vessels for however long that we decide, not be part of this false 80 to 100 year aging cycle pattern. So we're going to be completely and utterly freeing ourselves from that program. There's going to be loads of amazing things that I'm going to be sharing on the spiritual rejuvenation winter solstice retreat.
Beautiful. Jen, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you.
So wonderful to meet you, Joe. You're such a lovely man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. God bless.